This is Audible.
At Slaughter's End, a Flesh Tearers audio drama written by Andy Smiley, performed by Gareth Armstrong, Steve Conlin, and Phil Malloy. The dead littered the desert. Undulating dunes of bodies and broken vehicles lined the horizon. The lifeless eyes of traitors and loyalists alike stared up at the blood-streaked sky. Had they voice left in their gutted and torn bodies, they would have offered the heavens a plea. They would have begged their gods not to be left like this, abandoned prostrate before merciless suns that would steal the moisture from their flesh and bake their bones to dust. Amit grinned, a feral smile of malice and disdain that stretched his gore-soaked cheeks. There were no gods listening. The blood-armored world-eaters had failed in their slaughter. The roar of their patron had rumbled in anger across the heavens and faded to a desperate whisper. Not even the Emperor's light stretched to the earth of this world. The men of the 225th Portonian Rifles had died in his name, but they were beyond his sight. They had died in agony and terror, their screams devoured by the roar of chainswords and the braying snarl of demons. The chapter master stopped to regard a regimental flag as it flailed in the wind. It was torn and frayed, a grim homage to its bearer, whose entrails were strung out behind him like macabre pennants. Touching a hand to the rent in the armor plate protecting his abdomen, Amit pressed on. War had rendered the world a lifeless husk. The howling wind was a funerary dirge in ode to the recent dead. There was no one listening. No one save him. All else was slain. Except... Amit stopped walking, straining to hear over the howl of the wind. Someone yet lived. A dark hope filled Amit's weary limbs and numbed the pain racking his battered body. He started towards the sound, turning southwest and climbing down over mounds of corpses. Bones and armor plates gave way beneath his tread, snapping with a gnarled crunch as his boots drove them into the earth. The sand underfoot was stained a ruddy brown, soaked through with blood and filth. The once fine grains had been churned to a wet mulch, thick with viscera and entrails, the work of centuries undone in a matter of days. At the bottom of the hill, Portonian bodies had been stacked upon one another like sandbags. Behind the corpse wall, a dozen flesh tearers lay dead. It was the work of a butcher. Each of the flesh tearers had been ripped apart. Severed limbs and chunks of torso were strewn across the murder crater. Shattered blades glinted in the sun, evidence of a desperate defense. Venerable Brother Calicel lay toppled in their midst. The dreadnought had a gaping hole in his sarcophagus. The fused metal and charred edges of the wound suggested a melter bomb. Amit muttered a silent prayer for the fallen warrior and skirted around what remained of the hulking war machine. He followed the sound of labored breathing. Amit glared down at a world eater. His enemy lay pinned beneath the arm of fallen Calicel.
Tell me, traitor, what is it like?
The World Eater bared his teeth in a snarl, his bloodshot eyes bulging in their sockets as he struggled against the weight of the arm. Unable to lift it, he cast around in search of a weapon. Amit circled him, taking care to stay out of reach. Battle had stolen the colour from the World Eater's armour, leaving it the dull grey of bare ceramite. Only the deepest grooves of his warplate still bore a hint of crimson, dark scabs that were themselves slick with arterial fluid. The meat of his cheeks was burned away so that blackened bone stretched across his face like a rash, and what remained of his hair was matted to his skull by blood and mucus. Amit sat down on the corpses of 2 guardsmen. The pair of Portonians lay slumped over one another, their heads lost among the carnage surrounding them. The World Eater stopped struggling, for the moment in control of the single-minded rage coursing through his veins.
Who are you?
I am your enemy.
Amit picked up a pauldron and threw it into the World Eater's eyeline. Parted from one of his fallen brothers, it bore the chapter symbol.
Flesh terror. I will kill you.
When?
Amit tapped the dreadnaught's arm with the blade of his eviscerator.
How long shall I wait?
You mock me. You
mock yourself. Look at you, a broken warrior, pinned, impotent beneath his last victim, abandoned by his patron to die an ignominious death, a coward's end.
No! I will claim your skull for Khorne. He will elevate me from this accursed place.
Drool flecked the World Eater's mouth as he thrashed against the immovable weight on his chest.
Answer my question, Berserker, and I will allow you a chance at the death you crave.
You think me a fool. You will not free me. You will butcher me where I lie.
Amit crouched next to the World Eater's head.
Last chance. Answer me, or I will leave you here to die.
Free me and I will kill you.
The World Eater's eyes strained in their sockets, swollen by the promise of murder.
Then you will succeed, where hundreds of your wretched brethren have failed. It has been almost an hour since I finished killing the last of them.
Bold words, flesh terror. But you will not find me such easy prey. I am Bardak Scarthran, first disciple of the Bloodied Skull, chosen champion of Khorne. My axe will drink deep of your veins.
Perhaps.
Amit gave a tight-lipped smile and stepped away. He could feel his heart rising in his chest, his muscles twitching in anticipation of slaughter. The stench of blood and death was choking. It gripped his throat like a vice. A mounting pressure that would only be released when he smashed the World Eater's skull beneath his boot.
But first...
Very well. What? What is it you would have me tell you?
How did it feel to fall to your rage?
The World Eater grinned, his eyes widening in amusement.
Fall? I did not fall. I ascended. I walk the one true path.
Spare me your falsehoods. I have no wish to hear of your blood god.
Better to follow a god than the memory of a dead father and a corpse emperor.
Amit growled and struck the World Eater in the face.
Yes, I see it now. It has taken me these long centuries, but I see it. I see it in your eyes. The truth of it burns like balefire.
Speak!
It was the Emperor himself who set us on this path. He gave our fathers, gave us, you and I, the strength and will to kill. He sent us to slaughter in his name. He made butchers of all of us. Yes, the Emperor. He was the first and greatest of Khorne's children.
Amit grabbed the World Eater by the head, his armored fingers digging into flesh to crush bone.
Speak ill of the Emperor again, and I will rip your head from your shoulders!
The World Eater grinned darkly.
You would prove my point.
Amit roared and let him go, thundering his fist into Calicel's armored shoulders.
You are a fool, flesh-tearer. You cannot hide your true motives from Khorne. His axe cleaves through the meat of lies. Now, enough of this prelude. Ask me the question you have come half a world to have answered, and let us be done with one another.
You know what I ask.
Khorne would hear it from your own tongue.
The thirst, the hunger for violence and slaughter. After all the deaths you have wrought, how many more must you kill to gain a moment's respite? How much blood must you spill to silence the roar in your veins?
There is no respite beyond the moment. The nails do not allow it. To kill is life itself. It is to breathe, and with each breath grow stronger. That is what it is to butcher in the name of the blood god. It is what it means to be a true child of Khorne.
You are as craven as the hounds that follow your filth breed to war. It was foolish to expect truth from a madman.
Amit turned and started away from the World Eater.
The truth is the same whether you would believe it or not, flesh-tearer. Nothing is more glorious than the kill. What else matters in this universe? What is there that better defines us? We are butcher or butchered. The living or the dead. Do not pretend you do not already know this. Word of your deeds has long since been carried to the skull throne of Khorne.
Amit lunged at the World Eater, a surge of anger bringing his blade within a breath of the traitor's neck.
Even in our darkest hour, we are nothing like you. You are naught but rage and hatred.
Bardak bunched his fists in exclamation.
There is nothing more. You call it a curse. Ha! A convenient excuse to deny your true nature. The nails burn into my skull with every breath, driving me to blood. But you have no such depthless torment compelling you. The blood god runs in your veins. You are a truer son than even me.
No.
Tell me, flesh-tearer, what has been the story of your existence if not one of bloodletting and slaughter?
Enough!
Amit tore his blade down through the dreadnought arm, cutting the World Eater free. The World Eater staggered to his feet.
It seems the slaughter has touched us both, brother.
He gestured to the gaping wound in Amit's abdomen. Amit kept his eyes fixed on the World Eaters.
We have spoken enough. It is time one of us died.
Agreed. Your skull will make a worthy addition to Khorne's throne.
The World Eater circled away from Amit, upturning his empty palms, and gestured to the eviscerator wielded by the flesh-tearer.
He will reward me greatly for defeating you unarmed.
No!
Amit tossed away his weapon.
I will tear your head from your body with my bare hands.
They charged headlong into one another, arms spread wide in acceptance of the pain the other offered. Rage Rage stole all else from them. They fought to redefine violence, battering each other with savage, ugly blows. Fury met fury, wrath met wrath, bone broke and ceramite fractured. They attacked with unrelenting frenzy, neither giving any thought to defense. Above the clamor of their blows, a familiar rumble returned to the heavens.
You see, Flesh Terror? Khorne recognizes his own.
The World Eater smiled as blood began to rain overhead. Amit snarled and struck him again, a heavy right cross that sent his teeth spinning to the sands.
Even now you do his work.
Amit hit him again. The World Eater swung out with a right hook. Amit took the blow on the cheek as he closed, driving his elbow into the World Eater's brow. The traitor staggered, his eye ruined. Catching the lip of his pauldron, Amit pulled him close and smashed his head into his opponent's nose. The World Eater's face was lost behind a mask of blood.
Killing me will only bring you closer to his embrace.
So be it.
Amit struck him again and again, hammer blows that smashed the bones of his face until it was a lump of beaten flesh. The World Eater went slack in Amit's grip.
Khorne cares not from whence the blood flows, only that it flows.
Amit roared in pure hatred and wrenched the World Eater's head from his shoulders. He tossed the head aside and looked to the bloodied sky. The rumble overhead mixed with the thunderous beating of his heart, so that he was no longer sure which was which. He stood alone, a lord of slaughter in a world of the dead, and his cheeks grew wet as the blood continued to fall.
Audible hopes you've enjoyed this program. This is Audible.
Malkador, First Lord of the Imperium, by L.J. Goulding. Performed by John Banks, Beth Chalmers, Jenny Funnell, Jonathan Keeble, and Toby Longworth. The hour was late when Malkador finally came to the narrow stone staircase leading to the residencia in the highest reaches above the Katmandau precinct. His weary, sandaled feet took each step with a care that could only ever be born of too many remembered falls over the years, and he relied heavily upon his staff to keep his balance as he climbed. It had been dark when he left his private apartments several hours before dawn, and it was dark again now that he felt enough had been achieved that he might return to them. His duties had stolen the day from him, just as they had the day before, and the day before that, as far back as anyone else in the palace could remember. Every waking moment lost to the innumerable concerns of war and governance. There were conveyors and elevators that could shorten his route and allow him to rest his aching bones a little longer before he would need to rise once more. Doubtless, the watch commanders of the Heliopsychon would even approve a chartered ornithopter flight anywhere within the inner or outer wards, whenever the Imperial Regent required it. But always he made the journey on foot and alone. It was a ritual of sorts, and the Sigillite knew better than most that rituals were important. He reached an intermediate landing and paused to catch his breath. The psi flame at the head of his staff flickered on, cold and silent, casting more light than the pale lumen sconces set into the archway overhead. Malcador did not turn at the sound of other footsteps echoing up after him, but allowed himself a tired smile.
You would keep an old man from his glass of wine and a warm bed, Alum? I feel I have earned both today.
The adept was lean, studious, and always immaculate in the grey robes of the Chosen. Though he usually carried himself with all the decorum expected of his rank, it was clear this night that something else drove him on. He reached the landing and knelt before his master, bowing his head. His voice was hoarse, his eyes raw.
My Lord Regent, you should come.
An unexpected chill prickled at Malcador's skin, and the smile melted away. It seemed that the shadows beyond the light of his staff grew slightly darker in that moment, and he drew the cowl of his hood tighter.
It will be soon, then. I had hoped for a little more time.
The physicians say... They say there is nothing more they can do. She was asking after you, again.
All mortal weariness forgotten, Malcador lowered himself down, his simple chains of office trailing gently on the flagstones. He put a hand on the younger man's shoulder.
Let us go swiftly, then. I would be at her side when the end comes.
The chambers of Magister Sybil Neaster were far, far from the towers of the City of Sight, both literally and by many more subtle definitions. Malcador hesitated for just a moment at the oak-panelled door, running his fingertips over the grained surface of the wood, feeling the unmistakable frisson of psi-dampening crystal circuitry hidden beneath it. He steeled himself and pushed the door open. The lights had been turned down low. Beside the bed, a sister hospitaller, with a kind, earnest face, looked up at Malcador and Alum as they entered. She bowed deeply, and gestured for her apprentice to do the same.
My lord, I have followed the instructions of the Honourable Shiragian General. The Lady Magister is as comfortable as we can make her.
I'm right here. I can hear you. I'm blind, not deaf.
Malcador laughed, slipping off his sandals and stepping onto the threadbare carpets that surrounded the bed.
Grumpy as ever, Sybil. I hope you've been putting these young upstarts through their paces. Otherwise, they'll never learn a thing, eh?
The merest hint of a smile flickered across the deep lines of Neaster's face, pulling at the corners of her sunken, sightless eyes.
Too bloody right.
She jerked a thumb towards the Medicae servitor stationed at the other side of the bed.
Take that awful machine with you. All I can hear every night are his clockwork scrods ticking away like a broken chrono. He wants oiling. Take the money from my purse if you need to.
The sister hospitaller and her apprentice left, as quietly and respectfully as they could, with the servitor a few steps behind them. Malcador watched them go, leaning thoughtfully on his staff.
That's how they'll remember you now, you realize. And to think, you used to be so polite and diplomatic.
Neaster let her empty gaze fall from the upper reaches of the chamber to where the Sigillite stood. Her irises were permanently bloodshot and ragged, with slashes of sickly yellow around uneven pupils misted by cataracts.
With the greatest respect, Master, when I join the ranks of the recently deceased, I plan on paying very little heed to the expectations and gossip of the living.
Her eyes flickered to the shadows by the door.
And you, Alum Carpin, stop skulking around back there. You can bloody well leave too if you're just going to mope in the corner. I'm not having my final moments ruined by you snivelling. Go and finish your writing and give me some peace and quiet.
The adept shuffled into the light, wringing his hands together.
Lady Magister, I wanted to...
Oh, my Lord Sigillite, please take one of these pillows and throw it at him. I can see his maudlin soul light clear enough, but still, I think your aim will be better than mine.
Malcador trudged to Alum's side.
You can go. We should give her the dignity of being able to choose the company she keeps. There is nothing you can say to her that she does not already know, and it clearly means a great deal to her that you have remained close by for so many months, when I could not.
You are sure, my lord?
The Sigillite smiled, ushering him to the door.
I am sure. Go. As she says, you should return to your great work. I am very much looking forward to reading it when it is done.
Pausing at the threshold for one last glance towards the dying Magister, Alum pulled his robes tightly about himself and went out into the night's chill once more. All was silent in that chamber for a long while. In the distance, far away to the north, and yet still within the bounds of the imperial palace, the pealing of the great bell of lost souls could be heard, just as it always could in these dark times. Making his way to the foot of Nyasta's bed, Malcador pulled back his hood and let his silver hair fall freely. He straightened a little and peered down his hawk-like nose at her.
They are all gone. We are alone.
The astropath grimaced. She sagged into the blankets, letting out a thin gasp as she let all pretense slide away. Her angular, proud features were wizened by pain.
I'm sorry, Master. I am so very sorry. I could not let them see me like this. But I did not mean for them to bring you here, to distract you from... My lord, Master, please forgive me.
Malcador remained unmoving, and apparently unmoved. He scrutinized every minute detail of her face.
Why is it you think I am here, Sybil?
Tears ran from the astropath's ruined eyes.
Because in serving you, I have been your voice and your ear in the outer darkness. No other knows so much about what you have done, and the hidden truths you hold in trust for the good of mankind. The messages I have relayed for you, the many secrets I have kept, that I still keep, could bring the Imperium to its knees, just at the moment when a little ignorance would go a long way.
She paused for a moment, as if considering whether or not to take the thought to its logical conclusion.
Because I know the things that lurk in the span of a mortal's final breath. The things that our noble Emperor assured us for so long were not real, that hunger for our very souls. And so, I imagine you are here now to make sure that when my life flashes before me, no one and nothing else can steal a glimpse.
The Sigillite nodded slowly, then moved over to the empty desk in the corner of the room, its green marble top inlaid with the icon of the Adeptus Astra Telepathica in pearlescent coral. He held up his staff, peering at the twin-headed eagle that basketed the Psy-Flame with its iron wings.
I think perhaps you have misjudged me. Many have over the years.
He raised an open hand to the cold fire and closed his fingers in a deliberate, measured gesture. With a psychic pulse like a skipped heartbeat, the flames were snuffed out, and Nyasta flinched at the force of it. Then Malcador laid the inert staff carefully upon the desk pulled out the wooden chair beneath, and dragged it over to her bedside.
For now, I will put aside my duties, and the war, even the title of Sigillite.
He seated himself and took her hand. Her grip was weak, and her skin felt almost as thin as parchment.
For now, we shall merely be two old friends, speaking plainly and fondly, as old friends do when no one else is around to hear. Beyond that, there is nothing in all the galaxy that need concern us.
I don't believe you.
You don't believe me?
No, my lord. You just called me old. Bit much, isn't it? I mean, especially coming from you.
Apologies. Sometimes the Gothic tongue can be somewhat inelegant.
No excuses. I don't think we can be friends now. That's a pity. A real pity. My lord, Malcador, how old are you? I mean to say, I've been in your service for centuries, since you became First Lord, and you've not aged a day in all that time. Even when my sight was failing for good, I could tell.
Well, you're cutting straight to the point now, eh?
Time is not on my side. I'm not going to waste it being polite.
Very well, then. I am 6,718 years, 241 days, 11 hours, 8 minutes, and 56 seconds old. And there are days when I feel it.
That is not what I was expecting to hear. So what's your secret? And don't tell me it's Juvenat treatments and clean living, because I tried those.
Ah, a secret of mine that you don't know. Many wise and powerful men have wondered the same thing down the years. Even the noble Primarchs themselves whispered their theories when they thought I wasn't listening. It is not enough, it seems, that I act with the authority of the Emperor of mankind in all things, and stand at his side and counsel him openly. All wish to know whence comes such power, such privilege, and if it be something they might take for themselves. And yet very few of them ever dared to ask me directly. For that, if nothing else, you deserve the truth.
It is the Emperor, then. He chose you as his companion and confidant, and from that moment you were blessed with immortality. Even his sons cannot refute this.
No. You have it backwards, Sybil Niaster. I am the last of my order, the last Sigillite. And he was not the Emperor until he met me.
I don't understand.
For the longest time, he was only the greatest of many warlords of old Earth. They knew him... well, they knew him by a different name. And as for his sons... Consider this Aquila charm on your wrists. I gifted it to you when we first left the throne world together. But what does it mean?
It is the manifest glory of the Imperium.
What else?
It is the union of Mars and Terra for the good of all.
What else?
The eagle, blind to the horrors of the past, looking instead to the future.
Ah, and there you have it. And may such a dichotomy never be reversed while the Imperium yet endures. But this is not mere symbolism, and as you know, blindness is not always a lack of sight. The Emperor does not dwell upon the past. His attentions are ever focused on his vision for mankind's destiny, and so he does not always remember the lessons that the rest of us have learned along the way. But the Sigillite Order was created to remember, to preserve after a fashion. Without me, the unification of Terra would have been impossible. The Emperor has told me as much.
I cannot imagine you on the battlefield.
Oh, I fought at his side many times, my dear. But humanity's future is built upon the foundations of its past. Not unlike a palace on the mountaintop, if you will. My contribution to unity was in showing him why every other palace, mountain, and empire has fallen. And so it will be again. I will serve him in the way I was always meant to, reminding him of all that has gone before, for as long as he needs me to. But I sense a different kind of sadness in you, Sybil. You are not afraid to die.
I am not.
Speak, then. I am here to listen.
I am afraid that things have progressed too far. I am afraid that, for all the Emperor's vision and your wise counsel, the war has taken too many unexpected turns, and everything we have done will be for nothing.
It pains me to hear you say that, truly. That we, he and I, the Imperium, might fail.
Do you not hear the great bell tolling ceaselessly, day and night? Each chime a lost soul, another servant of the Imperium fallen. The last I saw, casualty manifests put deaths at Beta Garman alone in the billions. Billions! In a matter of months. This is not a war that mortals can win, and that scares me more than anything. We can only let the Primarchs murder each other, one by one, and see what remains of the galaxy.
Lean forward, my dear. Try to breathe. Here, take a sip. Take a sip.
I'm so tired, man.
Rest, Sybil. Lie back. Would it comfort you if I were to say the Primarchs, all of them, are but a means to an end?
I do not understand. Forgive me.
The Imperium is not for the post-humans, but for mankind. You know this. You helped me to manage them, to direct their efforts. The legions and their sires are conquerors' tools, and nothing more.
You mean the Thunder Warriors?
Like them, burning brightly but briefly. But the Emperor and I could not conduct the Great Crusade with gen-enhanced mortals. We needed something greater, something stronger to reclaim the stars. And in order to control it, we needed a lifespan for the Legiones Astartes that had nothing to do with aging or timed infirmity. Believe me when I say it, Sybil Niaster, this was always intended to be the final act of the crusade. We wanted the Primarchs to turn against one another, against their father. Be assured, we maneuvered each of them from the moment of their rediscovery, pitting them against one another, stoking their brotherly rivalries with his unequal favor. It was not difficult, no more so than positioning pieces on a Cheops board. Those who could not be managed well, they would never reach the end game. Oh, do not weep, my dear. You fear that the Emperor cannot control his sons, and yet I tell you that this war is the method of that control. The Primarchs have no more free will than we gave them.
Can it be true?
My failure was in underestimating the true enemy. The ruinous powers have emboldened their champions among the 18, and the war began before we were ready. And so, every toll of that bell gives me pause to question. Was this death one we intended? Or yet another innocent soul I might have saved? That is my burden to bear. And I do so that the Emperor may concentrate on the final battle to come.
Will he win?
The future is not my area of expertise. I trust in his vision, as we all must. I am here, Sybil. I am here. You must sleep. I won't let go. Let yourself fall. Let yourself fall, and he will catch you. This I swear. Give yourself to him.
The dawn came. The first paling of the eastward horizon over Gangjiang had a peculiar golden quality to it, even through the grimy haze above the sprawling refugee camps and the polychromatic shimmer of the palace's active void shields. Malkador remained at Nyasta's bedside, watching as the sun climbed over the horizon, bathing the old Himalasia in its serene light. He could remember every detail of every sunrise he had ever seen, and they were many, and yet he could not recall another that held both the perfect beauty and sadness of this one. He still held her cold hand, and he looked down at the tiny golden charm that lay beside it. The imperial eagle's sighted eye was a single emerald, no larger than a pinhead.
You promised. You promised me it wouldn't be like this. I lied to them to spare their sorrow, even as I envy their mortality. And it breaks my heart. It breaks my heart.
Swallowing his grief, his loneliness, Malkador gently laid the astropath's hands upon her chest in the sign of the Aquila, with the charm neatly placed on top. Then he rose from the chair and looked upon her one last time.
Goodbye, old friend.
Slowly, he drew up his hood and raised one open hand to the shadows. His staff flew through the air into his waiting grip. With a dazzling flare, the Psy-flame sprang into life at its head once more. He was Malkador. He was the Sigillite. He was First Lord of the Imperium. And he knew, with all certainty, that the end was coming.
Audible hopes you've enjoyed this program. This is Audible.
Guns of the Black Eagle by C.L. Werner. Performed by John Banks, Steve Conlin, and David Seddon. You ask me to explain the honor of Grimgar Odrickson. But I can see you think you know the answer already. I will tell you the truth. If you listen, perhaps you will understand. I have been Endrin Master of the Black Eagle on 67 ventures. She is as fine a frigate as was ever raised in the shipyards of Barak Zilfin. Into her, the shipwrights poured the majesty of their craft. Thrice-folded plating to resist even the claws of a Scaviathan. Decks of ether-cured stonewood to defy the worst acid showers. A sweep of bow so sleek she would cut through angry zephyrs like an iron-clad knife. Her Endrin, a masterpiece that could lift or drop her in a heartbeat. Synchronized pistons powering the gyroculator with such precision you could leave a tankard of grog and stand your watch and there would not be a drop spilled when you returned. And the Black Eagle was not without her talents. Across the hull she boasted a battery of ether carbines with magnoscopes. Along her sides she bore 12 bombs. And atop her forecastle was Anya, the biggest sky cannon ever mounted on a ship of her size. When she spoke, it was an appeal of thunder that would shake the fillings from your teeth. I'd served under many a captain before I met Grimgar. He was unremarkable on first impression, average in his build, if straying a bit towards a paunch. Conservative in his clothes and manners, neither stern nor lenient in his command. It was only when you looked in his eyes that you were impressed. Grey as steel and just as hard. They had a way of piercing through you, as though he wasn't looking at you, but at something ahead of you. That was Grimgar's remarkable quality. His foresight. We were flying through the Straits of Kabur, and by Grunye, I could not get that motivator to full capacity.
I do not like this, Thorgrad. I've seen no sign of that slinking jackal for 3 bells.
Nor of the lookouts in the cupola. I think they've decided we're a bit more of a challenge than they care to risk.
You marked the runes on her prow. They named her Skarsgård's Glory.
A thieving vulture, to blacken even such reputation as Barak Mornar.
Vulture is an apt choice. Captain Skarsgård Halfbeard never saw a trick he thought dishonorable. No, Thorgrad. He's out there, waiting.
For what?
That is the question. Another look with my Vard lass. See if I can spot Skarsgård's Glory. Skarsgård knows our holds are filled with ether gold. They might even know we've made a new strike and need to stake our claim.
If he does, he won't easily let us go.
No, he won't. Here, Thorgrad, take the Vard lass. Straight ahead. Do you see something? There.
I can't see. Yes? 100 yards from the prow. Something shining like a sliver of metal hanging in the air.
Helmsman! Keep her steady! Thorgrad, coax the engine to capacity. Pull her up, high as you can, fast as she'll take.
What is it, Captain?
It's a mine, lad. Skarsgård is a sneaky cur. Expects us to either plough straight into the mine, or else kill our engines for a dead stop.
His ship could be hiding behind those mountains we're passing, ready to pounce once we're helpless.
Then we'll have to ensure we aren't helpless. Grab onto something. We have to climb fast to escape the explosion.
She pulled through.
Hey! Oh, the Black Eagle's a tough one. Her hull's armor took the worst of it.
She's still taking a beating. That explosion shook her from keel to engine. If Skarsgård's Glory comes after us, we won't outrun her. Oh, Captain, listen. That knocking is coming from the primary motivator. It'll be all we can do to manage half speed.
Then there's only one thing to be done. Pile up bedding, clothes, anything that will make smoke. Set fires all across the deck. The mines hurt us, lads. Our only chance is to make it look like we're hurt more than we really are.
You want Halfbeard to think we're worse hit than we are?
We have to draw him in. You can bet your father's bones that Skarsgård will come in if he sees smoke. That mine wasn't strong enough to take us down, just knock us out. He wants to plunder the holds, not destroy the ship. Put those bedrolls around Anya. I want lots of smoke around the sky cannon.
Clever ploy, Captain, but will it be enough?
See for yourself. Coming around from behind that snowy peak. Ah, there's that greedy vulture.
Just as you say. A blue-black frigate bearing the colours of Barak Mornar.
Halfbeard will resist firing on us if he thinks we can't fight back. He won't risk ripping open our holds with a cannonade. Engine riggers! Go up and put on a show for those bandits. Look like you're making repairs, but be ready to drop down to the deck when the shooting starts.
Their ether engines will keep them aloft, and the Arcanauts can pull on their tethers to bring them back quickly. But will it be enough to convince Skarsgård?
It already has. Look at Skarsgård's glory. They're pouring on the speed now. Be ready, lads! They're taking the bait! Keep low and keep your guns ready. Anya will fire first. That'll be the signal for everyone else to open up. Just a little closer, you blackguard. Just a little closer.
They're firing on us, Captain.
They're just testing us. Steady, lads, and wait for Anya. There! We've got him! Gun crew, put a shell through their engine.
She's hit! They didn't see Anya aiming at them from behind the smoke.
Halfbeard will rue his overconfidence. The enemy is hurt. Let's hurt him even more!
They're backing off, Captain. Look then, they're sending off flares. They're asking for an armistice.
Halfbeard wants to parley. We must have hurt him really bad for that. Look, that glow around their engine. She's leaking ether gas.
One shot into that, and there'd be a reaction that would burst the engine and knock their ship from the sky.
Hail, Black Eagle!
It's Halfbeard. He's using his ship's grudge caller.
Then I'll answer him with our own. Hail, Skarsgård's glory! What do you vultures want? Your position is helpless. Surrender now, and I'll promise I'll spare your lives. It is you that is helpless. You've earned many grudges today with this treacherous ambush. This trade route belongs to Barak Mornar. I am doing nothing but ensuring the rightful tribute due my skyhold. The only treachery here is from you trespassers. Barak Mornar's claims were denied by the Geldrad. You have no authority to steal from us. I could have you blasted out of the sky right now. But that will be at an expense without profit. The ether gold would be lost. Then the ether gold is lost to you, because I will not surrender my ship to sky shackles. If that is your choice. We have more mines we can keep out of range of your guns and destroy you from afar. Oh, and that would not bring either of us profit.
Careful, Captain. He has some trick in mind.
He's already overplayed his hand. Anya is reloaded and ready to take another crack at his ship.
My holes are full, and will stay that way. If you press your claim, Half-Beard, I'll burn you and your rotten crew out of the sky!
Proud words. But are they only words? Do you respect the Canadron Code as I do?
Here it is. He thinks to use the code itself to trap us.
I honor the code. More than some a good name.
Then, since any further pursuit of this conflict would bring neither of us profits, I invoke the codicil of Rodraki. I challenge you, captain to captain, you and I, Grimgar, pistol against pistol. The loser forsakes his claim on the ether gold.
No, you cannot trust an oathbreaker like Half-Beard. He won't fight fair.
I'll not have my courage or my honor mocked by this pirate. Besides, what he says is true. They could finish us with mines.
But to put yourself at risk, trusting Half-Beard's word...
My life against that of the Black Eagle and her crew.
Not much of a choice.
It is no choice at all.
I accept your challenge, Skarsgård. Pistols it will be.
We will come alongside. We will raise a boarding bridge between our ships. That is where we fight our duel. Agreed, Grimgar?
Agreed, Half-Beard. I hold you to your honor and the letter of the code. If you break faith with me, the guns of the Black Eagle will turn your ship to scrap.
The code will be respected by us. I expect your crew to do the same.
Captain, you can't do this.
It is already done. See? They're readying the boarding bridge. One truth in Half-Beard's lies. This is the best way to settle the fight. Otherwise, many Dwarden will die to no profit.
They're sending out the bridge. Our Arcanauts will lock it fast.
Then it is time I met with Half-Beard and resolve this dispute. Are you ready, Grimgar? Ready to stand by the strictures of the code?
My crew will abide by the code. If you win, the ether gold is yours.
That isn't Half-Beard! It is a trick!
Oh, I'm afraid I was hurt in that volley. Really nasty splinter in my thumb. Couldn't possibly oblige you in our duel, Grimgar. But the code makes allowance for a substitute in such circumstances. This is Boraz, commander of my Grunstock Thunderers. Oh, surely you intend to honor the letter of the code and accept my substitute.
I knew this buzzard would cheat! Boraz is probably the best shot on that pirate barge. You can't face him.
I said we would abide by the code.
Then at least use some pretense to send a substitute of your own.
I ask no Dwarden to fight my fights.
I'll face your fighter, Half-Beard, but make no mistake that there will be a reckoning between us afterwards.
Only when I have to add up your ether gold for my ledgers, Grimgar. Boraz's fortunes in 10 Skyhold and never suffered a scratch.
He'll get more than a scratch today. Tell him we'll use the knocks of my engine as our signal. When I join him on the bridge, we wait for 10 knocks to pass. Then we draw and fire.
And may the best Dwarden win.
Let's just blast him with Anya. The curs have already broken the spirit of the code.
The spirit, but not the letter. I will not disgrace my ship and my crew by letting them break the code.
He will kill you. You can't win.
Then you will surrender the ether gold to Halfbeard, as you have agreed to do. That is my final command.
I watched as Captain Grimgar stepped out onto the bridge. He presented a bold and defiant figure as he stood there, a dozen paces from Halfbeard's champion. I knew there was no way he could outdraw Boras. But it was pride, rather than dread, that gripped me as I saw him waiting for the signal. 3, 6, 9. Suddenly, Captain Grimgar fell, crashing flat against the bridge. The volley pistol whipped out from his holster and he fired. Early, catching his enemy by surprise. But his shots weren't for Boraz. They were fired up at the pirate ship's damaged engine. The ether gas leaking from the engine was ignited. In a blistering flash, the engine was wrapped in flame. The fires raged inwards, igniting the reserves within. While Halfbeard's pirates screamed in horror, the inferno built in intensity, rising in both heat and violence, until the engine itself burst apart in a blinding ball of flame and shrapnel. Our engine destroyed, Skarsgård's glory was sent plummeting to the ground far below. The boarding bridge was ripped free, tearing through our gunwales as it hurtled down after the doomed ship. Even as the bridge was ripping free and the pirates were falling from the sky, Captain Grimgar made a desperate leap to the Black Eagle's deck. For an instant, I thought he wouldn't make it.
By Grunny, that was a near thing. Whatever luck I have, I probably just used it all.
You brought down Halfbeard's whole ship!
The Black Eagle's guns softened her up for me. All I did was give Halfbeard the last little push.
But you fired before the 10th knock. You drew early. You broke the code.
I kept the code. I tripped. My gun went off by accident. It was simply a whim of fate that I shot the leaking engine.
You planned this. The moment Halfbeard challenged you.
I fell, and my gun went off. Who is to say that isn't what happened?
A true Caradron always respects the code. Especially when he doesn't.
Audible hopes you've enjoyed this program. This is Audible.
The Heart of Decay by Ben Counter. Performed by John Banks, Matthew Hunt, and Toby Longworth.
Captain Vidana, well met.
Well met. Is there any change with the prisoner, Apothecary?
His life signs are abnormal, but they are steady. I'm glad we brought him in uninjured. Who knows what I would find in there if I had to operate.
You may still have to get him on the slab, Acheon. There's no telling how far I will have to go.
You're doing this alone?
It's the only way, brother. Open the cell.
Oh, happiest of days. I finally have a visitor.
In good spirits, I see.
Of course. Why must relictors be so morose all the time? Always so humorless, so grim.
I see nothing too joyous in your current position, Urbar.
So, you know my name. Wonders upon wonders.
We know a great deal about you, Galactus Urbar of the Death Guard Legion. The relictors make something of a speciality of uncovering that which is hidden. The deeds of the Death Guard are recorded in the Libris Mortuoris Aeternum. It is thought lost, but we have a copy in our librarium. Your name is written there. So, you see, when we set our sights on learning a secret, we learn it.
So, we are to engage in a battle of wits? Oh, what fun! So, just what secret is it you desire to learn from me? The names of your fellow space marines whose lives I have taken over the millennia? The worlds full of innocents compelled to death and madness by our campaigns? Or the glimpses of glorious Nurgle I was granted for my service to the Plague God? Do you wish to hear of that, brother?
I am not your brother.
Now, have I hit a nerve? A million apologies for my trespass. How was I to know that such a simple word as brother would cause you such distress? Does it disgust you, brother, to think that you and I are so much the same?
You were taken when your spaceship was crippled by our strike cruiser and boarded. My battle brother Selturis was lost. You killed him.
So, that was his name. How hot his blood was when I set it free with a stroke of my blade. I shall hold the sight of him dying as a most precious memory for the rest of my days.
And just how many of those days do you think you have left?
And so we come to the threats. You are going to kill me, is that right? Perhaps inflict sufferings without number if I do not speak. How sad for you that it is a waste of your time. I was created to know no fear, just like you, brother. The infliction of pain is merely a reminder of the blessed decay that courses through me. The spectacle of death takes me one step closer to uniting with all things that rot in the great cauldron of the Grandfather. No, brother, I care not how many days I have left or how they will be filled. I have spent 10,000 years in service to my God. There is nothing left in this universe to threaten me
Your
with...
spacecraft, the Bubonicus. It was in transit toward the region of the Ghoul Stars. You were headed there with some urgency. Just you, a crew of servitors, and a cargo of fresh bodies from the reaping of Cathana. Where were you headed, and what were you going to do when you got there?
Ah, so now the rules of our game are set. You want to know what I am going to do with the corpses? Then, as a token of my sportsmanship, I will give you that. The Blessed of Cathana were raw materials for experimentation.
Experimentation into what?
No, brother. Do you think I would give up on our game so easily? We have barely started. No, there must be a give and a take. Captain. You are a captain of the Relictors, are you not? Such an exalted personage I must be to deserve interrogation by one such as you. No. For every morsel I parcel out, you must pay me back in kind. That is the game we will play.
Perhaps you have misunderstood your position here. You are imprisoned in our fortress monastery. There is no way out. A whole chapter of Space Marines bars your way. If you cannot convince me otherwise, I will have you transported to the generatorium reactor for incineration.
But then our game would be over. Nobody would win.
Then what will you give me, Death Guard?
I will give you the greatest blessing any living thing will ever receive. The true understanding of decay.
Not good enough, Urbar.
Oh, you're leaving me. Such a shame. I was beginning to enjoy your company.
I hope your god listens, for you are running out of time to pray.
Hurry back soon, brother!
Well, that went as expected. He really thinks of this as a game?
Or he is just stalling for time. Let him stew for a while. Before I go back in, I would have you take a gene seed sample. Perhaps you can analyze it and tell us a little more about what we are dealing with.
Not a task I'd relish, Captain, but it shall be done.
Now, what is this? A new playmate?
Do not bother struggling against your restraints. They will hold. With luck, this will definitely hurt.
Ah! Pain! The herald of Grandfather Nurgle's approach. Our cowardly bodies use it to tell us when we are undergoing harm. But to one who understands, it is an omen of joy. It is with pain that our body loses the shackles of its form. I pity you so, little apothecary, that you are still imprisoned in your crude and rigid body. If only you could understand the blessings Grandfather Nurgle gives! If only you could be free!
If only you could be quiet.
Hey! Like the homecoming of an old friend! Oh, how I miss you! Oh, the fun we could have! Pain, the herald of the alteration of flesh! Pain, the sacred catalyst!
Won't you join in the fun? Why, you playmate?
What abominable...
You might be a space marine, but you are still human. You still have to breathe.
Isolation protocol! Activate the quarantine fields!
Report, Apothecary.
He mutated 8 hours ago, as soon as I was close enough to make the incision for the gene seed. Biomass is up 40%. New organs, massively altered skeletal structure. I would say all the tentacles are the most normal part of it. His life signs are haywire. I cannot even tell if he has a heartbeat anymore. He is still changing even now. What do you plan to do, Captain?
Carry on. We have our orders.
You're going in?
It is the only way. Open the door.
Captain Vidana, I took too great a risk. I could have been killed. All the chapter has invested in me would have been lost.
It is done, Brother Acheon. We will deal with that when we are done with our task.
Yes, Captain.
Good day, Captain. I am glad you have returned. I so enjoyed our conversation.
So now I see what you truly are. A foul and corrupted thing.
I know! Isn't it wonderful? Your apothecary friend didn't appreciate it either. He severed one of my pseudopods. Luckily, I grew it back. Thus do the unenlightened react when they see the truth of Nurgle.
Then tell me, if you are so desperate to educate me in the ways of your god, speak!
And you would listen, Captain?
Call it a test of faith. If I can hear your poisoned words and resist them, then I become stronger in my convictions that all your kind must be destroyed. On the other hand, if your words corrupt me, then I am hardly fit to call myself a space marine of the Relictors.
But, brother, you are already corrupt. That is the first of the grandfather's truths. Every cell in your body decays with every moment. Even as we speak, you are rotting away. For what is the only force that holds everything in its grasp? Decay. Every living thing, even the stars themselves, will one day rot. Even a space marine with all the artificial strength of his Primarch will eventually slough off his flesh and putrefy to nothing.
And you will not?
Oh, I will rot, Captain, but therein lies the gift of Nurgle. For while decay makes you weak, it makes me strong. I command the decay within my body. I mold it to my will. It becomes the strength to spread the wisdom of Nurgle to those who will see it, and to crush those who will not. When we are born, when we fight and strive, when we die, when the galaxy itself darkens and is extinguished, decay is the only constant. Decay is existence, Captain. And when you master your decay, you master your universe.
Yes, and to master it, I must become like you.
If you are lucky.
And how did your mission to the Ghoul Stars help you with all of this?
The Death Guard are foremost in their worship of Grandfather Nurgle. And the Grandfather does so laugh for his children to find their own concoctions with which to infect all those potential worshippers out there. Of course, doing so requires ample raw materials. The unbelievers of Karthana were blessed in death, as they never were in life, to serve as such raw materials.
Where were you taking them?
No. Our game has only just begun. You give a little, I reciprocate. You learn of the Grandfather's gift. I give you just a little information in return. Have you not been paying attention, Captain?
Very well. What must I do to get to the next stage of your game?
Your task is easy now. Just wait. Just Just a little longer. Yes, yes, I can feel it. All Nurgle's little children glow within me. All their teeming billions yearning to be born, to be free, to infect.
Captain, the cogitators just detected a massive infectious material spike.
The game is done, Captain. The Grandfather wins. He always wins.
He's free!
Captain, get out of there! Captain, are you harmed?
No. Thrown alive, he tore right through the wall. Which way is he headed?
The bioscanners have him making for the chapel.
Then we must stop him.
Can you bring him down?
Before he mutated, I would wager yes, but now... Well, there is only one way to answer that.
What do we do if he escapes?
We pray, brother.
So, this is what passes for a holy place. So cold and sterile, so dead. And the statue of your beloved Emperor has seen better days. Do you see how even the lifeless stone decays? How even the face of the Emperor gives way to rot?
The statue is from the Ecclesiarchal Palace, salvaged from the fires of the Age of Apostasy. It has weathered thousands of years, and it will be standing here when you and I are gone. Not everything rots away.
The image of Grandfather Nurgle would banish all this gloom. He would gaze down upon his congregation with laughter in his eyes. If you could but understand the blessings of Nurgle, my brother, you would clamor at the gates of his cathedral.
I will stand by my Emperor, if the alternative is becoming like you.
But you will become like me, Captain. Have you still not seen it? Look upon what the Grandfather has hatched within me. See these organs, so beautifully distended. Here lies the Grandfather's most beautiful gift. Have the relictors written in their annals of the glory of Nurgle's rot? A disease so virulent, a single spore will stake its claim and thereafter transform the blessed recipient into a devotee of Nurgle, infected in mind and body. Beautiful, transformed, free.
Not here, Urbar. This ends now.
Such a pretty power sword you carry, Captain. A shame that every limb you lop off will just grow back.
Then I'll have to take your head.
Oh, brother Captain, do you still not understand? It does not matter what happens to me now. Our little game was played to give the Nurgle's rot within me the time to mutate into a strain that can infect the gene seed of the Relictors. Even now it spores course through your fortress monastery. Every one of your battle brothers is already infected.
Blasphemer. I will anoint this place with your blood!
Can you hear that, Captain? The grandfather laughs at your impotent anger. Do you truly believe one of the Death Guard would let himself be taken alive? Do you think you really had me imprisoned when I could have walked out at any moment? Now that Nurgle's rot has flowered within me, I have already won. I need no power blade, brother. A sword of bone will strike as keen. You are strong, Captain. You will serve us well. Grandfather loves his little children. Grandfather loves his little pets.
Your god will never be welcome here.
A frag grenade? How clever! I cannot die. I cannot be stopped. I am the plague incarnate.
Acheon, now!
If you are the plague, we are the cure.
Inject him again!
The dose will be lethal.
Not for him. Now do it!
I am the plague. I cannot die.
Stable. Brainwaves are normalizing. He's coming round.
Are the restraints holding?
It's solid ceramite, Captain. He's not getting out.
Then this is your realm, Apothecary. Continue.
What is this place? Where am I?
You are in our Apothecarian. We brought you here after sedation. You needed a hefty dose. Enough to kill several space marines. But it calmed you down. In the end.
What have you done to me?
You are in the sarcophagus of a dreadnought that once housed a great champion of our chapter. He was lost in battle, and his dreadnought was damaged beyond repair. But we salvaged it, knowing we could put it to good use. It turns out the sarcophagus is perfect for sealing in a living creature while rendering him immobile and conscious.
Then you have taken your revenge on me. But it does not matter. Your whole chapter is infected with Nurgle's rot. Every one of your battle brothers will waste away and rise again as devotees of Grandfather Nurgle. And you will march into the laboratory vats of Helacrox Prime, eager fodder for our experiments.
So, Helacrox Prime was your destination?
It matters not. This entire fortress monastery is infected.
You are not in our fortress monastery.
What?
You asked if we really thought a Death Guard would ever be taken alive if he did not want to be. Did you really think we would bring you to our fortress monastery? To the heart of our chapter? No, Urbar. You are on board the Solemn Sanctity. It was scuppered from our fleet 300 years ago and has been adrift ever since. When the Relictors heard of a strain of Nurgle's rot, created to infect space marines, we fitted it out as a spacebound laboratory and set about acquiring a sample of the virus, which, thanks to you, we have.
But you are infected. You and your captain.
Indeed we are. But now we have waited for you to incubate the mutated strain. You are imprisoned, and we have a constant source of the disease to examine and experiment upon. If we are successful, we can cure ourselves. If not, others will follow and continue our work.
But you will turn into a servant of Nurgle. You will beg for the Grandfather's blessing.
Then we will be executed by our brethren. We accepted that sacrifice when we were assigned to this mission. And how could I ever turn down the chance to examine a living, breathing member of the Death Guard? My curiosity got the better of me. I never thought I would get an opportunity like this. Furthermore, our fellow chapters do not always agree with our methods. A cure for Nurgle's rot will do no harm at all to our standing in their eyes. I have much to thank you for, Urbar of the Death Guard, and I will have plenty of time to do it.
What are you doing? Knocking off the corpse guard?
My procedures require you to remain conscious, but immobile. With your body temperature lowered, the sarcophagus system will leave your mind free to wander. I understand it is quite the transcendent experience to be severed from the world, but denied oblivion. Your world will be the confines of your own diseased mind. Perhaps you will find your god in there, but I doubt it, brother.
Audible hopes you've enjoyed this program. This is Audible.
Ahriman, Key of Infinity by John French. Performed by John Banks, Steve Conlin, Jonathan Keeble, and Saul Reichlin. The prisoner leapt off the slab. Its body slid through the molecules of the restraints and hit the energy dome. Sparks showered through the air as the field collapsed into a flat blast wave. The prisoner landed in a crouch. Its jailers loomed above it, towering in their armor. Behind them, their crude automaton began to turn, light glinting off the silver and black of its carapace.
Kill protocol!
The warrior in orange and black armor shouted. The automaton stamped forwards, piston-driven limbs shaking the deck. The cannon on its shoulder swiveled. The prisoner could feel the dark energy dancing in the weapon. It knew its shape and taste, old and familiar from wars that had scarred the stars when they were young. The gun weapon drew breath to fire. The prisoner's senses traced the distances between every point in the room and sliced time down until only the decay of atoms marked its passing. The short distance from it to the automaton's gun, from the automaton to its masters, from those masters to the door. Every measured value became like crystal, every facet and plane extending through countless dimensions. The automaton fired. A beam of darkness sliced out. The air screamed. The beam struck the prisoner's torso. The substance of its form began to unravel, crumbling into nothingness as the beam bored through it. It was so quick. For other creatures, it would have been an instant, but for the prisoner, it was a slow unfolding of obliteration. It had time to observe, to analyze, to know that the beam would pulse and the black energies would swallow its body in a flash of collapsing matter. It would not survive, but it did not need to survive. It just needed to reach the sphere which lay on a plinth behind its jailers. Its hand closed over the sphere. And the universe was made again, in a flash of collapsing time. The prisoner became aware. Its senses reconnected to its consciousness, one at a time. It could hear movement around it. It heard the words, and its mind began to break down the data they carried. Potential meanings rose and clustered. It could see the root of meaning in the language, but it needed more to form understanding.
No?
It was a simple language, but with some unusual symbolic systems grafted into its structure. The voices of long-dead civilizations echoed at the edge of the words.
Function, ekitkel of technology, Rauth Belshand, Shishan, Untain, and Iskoid, Raos Ason, Turditsis. Just Verash, Daenu. Fear, Tahat, we Kaus as two. That Enhet comfort.
With a little more analysis, the prisoner could have traced the roots of the language back to its genesis. That could be useful in time, but for now it was irrelevant. The prisoner needed to escape, and for that it needed one thing. It needed time.
It is aware of us?
Power is running through its structure.
Is that a way of saying yes or of saying no?
It is the only data I have available that relates to your question. I have no knowledge of this form of life.
Life? Yes, I suppose we must call it that.
Visual input returned. 3 figures stood before the prisoner. 2 were of the bipedal typical norm and wore machine armor. The third was a pure machine entity, albeit a crude one, an automaton crafted of circuits and pistons. An energy lance with a fluted barrel projected above its shoulders. The prisoner watched the trio as its sight stretched into the edges of the electromagnetic spectrum. It could not perceive the submolecular yet, but that would come. It needed time, and the best way to gain that was to speak.
I can hear you. I can see you.
You speak our language.
Its root and structure is simple. Deriving its method and order expression is likewise simple.
What is your name?
Name? Yes. A concept that your pseudo-knowledge system would value. The closest approximation that I can offer is Setek, servant of eternity to the dynastics of the Hyksos.
2 figures glanced at each other.
It speaks like a human. There are emotional markers in the tonal structure. Arrogance, defiance, disdain.
No, it is not talking like a human, it is talking like us. It is imitating us. Are you not, Setek?
You are a perceptive but limited being.
Everything is a matter of perspective. From where I look at this moment, we have much to gain from one another.
Setek did not reply for a second. A section of its consciousness was preparing to realign the molecules of its body. When that was complete, it would be able to phase through its bonds. From there, well, that depended very much on where it was. On board a large ship in the vacuum, yes, it was certain of that. But where was that ship? It shut down the line of thought. It would need to have answers, but they would only be relevant once it was free. For that, it needed to reach the chronometron, which lay on a stone plinth to the side of the slab. It would not have time to perform a significant time alteration, but it could reset events and make incremental changes for the next time it lived these moments. It calculated what it would need to do, and the precise operation it would need to perform in the instant it touched the chronometron. As the formulae crystallized in its mind, it reflected that it might already have done these exact actions before.
What are your names? That is the convention within your communication template, is it not?
My name is Isaac Araman, and my companion's name is Ignis.
I have never encountered your species before, but you are not typical specimens. When I was last conscious, there were species that existed that might have developed into your genus. But I would have expected both greater deviation from that physiology and less amplification of gross physical qualities. Therefore, you are not evolved creatures. You are creations, fusions of crude knowledge and biological stock. Is this line of reasoning correct?
Ignis turned to Ahriman. The black lines of his bioelectric tattoos reformed into a different pattern.
Do you intend to question this thing, or does our method of analysis consist of letting it ask the questions? I do not intend this as humorous.
Ahriman did not respond, but held the gaze of Setek. There was something about that stare. Setek had not felt anything close to an emotion for eons, but the cold intensity in those blue eyes.
You infer a great deal from very little, Setek.
You are impressed by such small things. When you have aided in the building and destruction of civilizations greater than anything you can imagine, the wonder of the beasts which roam the ruins means nothing.
I infer that it means us.
My people shackled the stars and broke mortality when the species you sprang from had barely left the slime pools it spawned in. Our wars burned reality, and the dominion of our kings is without limit. The ground you tread on is not yours. It is ours.
The Necrontyr. The Sleeping Ones.
That name is not ours. Why give a name to totality?
Because whatever you were, you failed. Those that outlive ruin can call the wreckage of the past whatever they please.
We were, and are, and shall be. And I must thank you both, Araman and Ignis. This primitive exchange of meaningless emotional postures has proved most instructive. I know you now, Isaac Araman, and will remember you. But you will not remember this!
Setek dissolved the shackles into dust and leapt for the chronometron. Ignis and Ahriman began to move. They were fast, very fast, but they were unprepared, and Setek's hand was around the chronometron, and the calculations flowed across the contact, and Ignis shouted, and the world began to end again.
Credence! Care protocol!
The beam of darkness stabbed out from the automaton's gun and struck Setek in the torso. The chronometron activated, and the present became the past. Time peeled back around Setek. It could not remember the previous instances of this moment, but information existed in his awareness that could only be there if he had already passed through this time before. It knew the names of the three figures who stood above him. It knew the positioning of each object in the cell, and most importantly, it knew that this was the final loop through this instance. Its chronometron had moved position by increments through each of the previous iterations of this encounter. Each time it had reached the device before, it was destroyed, and each of those times it had been able to steal a sliver more time for the next instance. With each of those changes, it had increased its awareness and changed the setting of the chronometron. It only needed to perform this one final operation, and it would be able to collapse this loop of time. It would be free.
It is aware.
Yes, it is aware.
Setek's thought flow faltered. Something was out of place in the pattern of events. Something that it had not engineered. It did not have time to deduce what was wrong. Every slice of its consciousness was needed to prepare its body to phase through its shackles.
You are Setek, cryptech of the dynastics of the Hyksos. Can you understand me?
I can understand you. Your linguistic forms are as primitive as your methods of imprisonment.
Do you know why you are here?
Setek paused. The question did not fit. Lines of deduction and inference began to spawn in Setek's mind. He shut them down. It was irrelevant, and he needed his full consciousness preparing to interface with the chronometron as he was almost ready. He just needed another sliver of time.
You wish information. You wish secrets.
Yes, but your insight is limited.
And this exchange is irrelevant.
The shackles dissolved as Setek came off the slab. The skin of his frame flickered from dull chrome to mirror black. The automaton began to move. Its cannon swiveled. The dark energies within built. Setek's hand extended to the chronometron. The beam of darkness snapped out, but it would never find its target. The chronometron was beneath Setek's hand. Its fingers closed on the device and froze. Frost climbed its digits. The air was shimmering. Setek's awareness was bubbling with paradox. Light blurring to dark, mass and energy interchanging and vanishing out of existence. The beam of the automaton's gun was a frozen splinter of blackness hanging in midair. Ahriman and Ignis were still, but light blazed around them, feathering into shadow, shifting between colors. Invisible bands of force coiled tighter around Setek as it forced out words.
You are slaves of the anathema realm.
And now you see the totality of your position. To watch your actions has been most illuminating.
Ahriman extended his hand, and the chronometron rose from the plinth and settled into his palm. He turned it between his fingers, head tilting as the light played over the sphere's surface. Ignis stepped closer beside him, tattoo patterns shifting across his blank face. Ahriman opened his hand, and the chronometron floated up into the air, and then dropped into Ignis's grasp.
Incredible. The effect on the flow of time is seamless. Not even a ripple in the warp. The events are simply reset and flow again.
And this from a bauble carried by one of their techno-viziers. Does this answer your doubts about the reality of such technology?
It is persuasive, but by what means does it function?
Setek's eyes buzzed with static as Ahriman leaned in towards him. The green lenses of the sorcerer's helm blazed bright.
Ah, that, my brother, is the heart of the question.
Audible hopes you've enjoyed this program.